Hold on. Alright, let's make sure we're live on the YouTubes. Are we live on the YouTubes? Let's see, let's see. Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Alright. There we are. Hold on. Good morning, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Hope you guys are making lots of money. Money, 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 money. Money! Yes. Hope you guys are making lots of money. Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. Just keeping an eye on RDAC. RDAC did have a nice run earlier in the morning, up 256%. Up 256%. Give me 1 second. 1 second. Hold on. Hold on here. Yes. Let me just put this over here. Alright. Let me just fix up the description over here. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, how's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? Alright, hold on. Alright. Marty says, good morning, Doubles and Banger Nation. Good morning, Marty. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hope you're having a good day. Hope you're making lots of money, Marty. Marty money, 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 money. Try saying that 10 times fast. Marty money. Yes. Hold on 1 second. There we go. We're good. Everything looks copacetic on the YouTubes. Does the audio work? Hold on. Let's make sure. Hold on, hold on. Yep. Yes, it does. Audio works perfect. All right. So let's take a look at X. Let's make sure we're live on X. Are we live on the X? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Are we live on the Twitch? Let's see if we're live on the Twitch. All right. There's that. Let's make sure we are live on the Facebook. Are we live on Facebook? Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. All right. Yes, we are. All right. And let's make sure we are live on the TikTok, Tiki-Taki, aka the Tac Tac. Let's make sure. Are we live there? Yes, we are. Beautiful. Wonderful. Wonderful. Yes. Good. Good. All right. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we're taking a look at RDAC. Let's take a look at RDAC really quickly. All right. RDAC. All right. So, RDAC did have a nice run up earlier in the day. Ran up a nice 256% right over here. Shot up immensely over there. Proceeded to form a bit of a descending wedge right over here before eventually curling its way back up over here and then forming another pennant right here. Alright, so as of now, this stock basically has multiple pennants. One is a descending wedge that went up a little bit, curled up slightly, and then basically turned into a pennant. Legal says, good morning, Doubles. Good morning, Legal. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hope you're having a wonderful day. All right. And as of now, RDAC, all right, we called this stock prior to It's run up 256%. And we called it actually this morning. All right. Nick on Facebook says, good morning, doubles. Hello. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. All right. All right, we called the stock on a private Discord early this morning at 4:44 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, prior to its run up 256%. Needs volume to break the mini pennant and the VWAP at $16.24 for it to be somewhat schmexy to meow. That's RDAC. RDAC. There we go. There we go. All right, all right, all right. All right, let's put this over here. Let's put this over here. There we go. Boom. All right. All right. There we are. There we are. So, let's see what else we got going on here. There's also MRNX, which is extremely expensive. That one ran up a nice 171%. Actually ran up a bit higher, 195%, but it is extremely expensive. I'll take a look at it, but it is extremely expensive, so I will note that. Ladies and gentlemen, I will note that real quick. Let me get the announcements out here, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get the announcements out. All right. All right, all right, all right. Hold on 1 second. 1 second. All right. Let me just put this over here, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen. Let me just put this over here. Let me get these announcements out real quick. But while I'm getting these announcements out, how was you guys' Taco Tuesday? How was your day yesterday? And better yet, how is your day going today? Put it in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Put it in the chat. Let me know how your days are going. How's everybody's day going, man? What do you guys think of RDAC? What do you guys think of these stonks? Put it in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. What do you guys think of that YJ stock that just shot up 203%, which I'm going to be going over next? What do you guys think of that stuff? Put it in the chat. All right. Let me just put this over here. Boom. All right. Hold on, hold on. All right. There we are. There we are. All right. Now, let's see here. All right. Let's see here. Let me just get these announcements out. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I've been chilling. I had some tacos last night, a little bit of steak. You know, had a good old time, ladies and gentlemen. Had a good old time with the family. Got to spend time. Got to enjoy it. You know what? That's the stuff that matters right there, ladies and gentlemen. That's the stuff that matters. That is the stuff that matters. Hold on 1 second. Just getting all these announcements out here. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is the stuff that matters. Hold on, hold on, hold on. All right, there we go. All right. 1 second, 1 second. Alrighty. Alrighty. Hold on one second. There we go. Bobo Beebs says howdy. Howdy, Bobo. Hearing you, Lima Charlie. Copy that, Bobo. Thank you. All right. Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to check out our free Discord to get the exclusive Discord live stream. Get access to the free roll, which gives you access to the free Discord exclusive live stream on our private Discord channel. Link to join that is in the description down below, as well as the pinned comment section. So be sure to check that out. And gain access to free Discord exclusive alerts, all sorts of other cool stuff like that. Hold on. All right, and of course, be sure to check that out. Be sure to join that free Discord. Get the free rolls. You can get access to exclusive picks that happen on occasion. You get access to the exclusive live stream. You get access to the exclusive review that also goes on there. It's basically like a sample. It's like a Costco sample of the premium package, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. R-Star says, YJ, yeah, good sector / theme there. Wait for correction and curling before entry on YJ. I don't do entries. I don't do the entry stuff there. That would be financial advice, and I cannot disclose any financial advice because I am not a stock advisor. This is just a show, so do your own due diligence before purchasing anything in the stock market at all whatsoever, ladies and gentlemen. But YJ did have a nice movement. It did have a nice movement, up 214%. Has a conference call scheduled for tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it is confirmed that the earnings for the H1 earnings are going to be held and actually released on Thursday, August 20th, which is tomorrow, before the market opened. This is a China stock as well. The China stocks, they tend to pop up, drop down. They tend to be a bit sporadic with the price action on occasion, so we're going to keep an eye on this one. It does have a nice movement going upward right over here, but it did form a little bit of resistance at $5.81. Let's get some support and resistance lines over here as well. Let's get some other support and resistance lines right over here. All right, as of now, it has to break this resistance at 581 and then has to break the high of day at 639 for it to really be somewhat interesting to me. Otherwise, not going to be too interesting to me. It has to remain friends with the trend, has to hold above the support line at $5.29 for it to be somewhat interesting to me. Otherwise, not interesting. You know how it is. All right. As of now, it ran up 238%. We're going to actually put that up there in just a second. Let me just put this over here. All right. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to check out our private Discord. Link to join us in the description down below, as well as the pinned comment section, so be sure to check it out. Be sure to check out our 4-day trial for the real-time alerts and scanners for only $9.99. Link to join us in the description down below, as well as the pinned comment section, so be sure to check that out. When you get in there, let us know you saw us on the stream. We'd love to hear from you, ladies and gentlemen. Yeesh. Alright, so like I said, like to join that is in the description down below, right over here. Pinned comments section. Boom, there you go. Alright, there we are. Alright. Let me put this over here. Boom, and there we go. Oh, and ladies and gentlemen, of course, if you want to rep the Banger Nation, if you want to rep the set, be sure to check out the merch. We have merch, ladies and gentlemen. We do have some merch, so be sure to check that out as well. We got all sorts of cool things, from t-shirts to hoodies. We also have caps. We have cup and handles, aka mugs. We have the wonderful tumblers there. We have tumblers. We have mouse pads, stickers, all sorts of cool stuff. So be sure to check it out. Link to join us in the description down below. Link to get all that good stuff is in the description down below, so be sure to check it out. Alright, let's continue with YJ. So YJ did have some movement upward just now. Ran up a nice 238%, but the high a day on it is 256. Now we actually called the stock YJ. Hold on, let me put it over here. YJ ran up 256%. 256%. All right. We called the stock on our private Discord prior to its run up 256%. All right, as of now, needs to break the small resistance at $5.81. And the higher day, it needs to break above that higher day at $6.39 for it to be somewhat interesting to me. All right, has to hold above $5.29. Needs to hold support at $5.29 for it to be somewhat interesting to me. Has to hold that support line, which it's not doing right there. So, we'll see what happens. Again, this stock has H1 earnings that are going to be happening tomorrow, as well as a conference call tomorrow. And while it did have a nice run, it looks like it's pulling its way on back right now. So, it looks like it's forming a potential, possibly, maybe, cup and handle right over here. Possibly. We'll see what happens, ladies and gentlemen. We shall see what happens. We shall see what happens with YJ. YJ, there we go. All right, 1 second. 1 second. Hold on. There we are. Let me put this over here. All right. So yeah, as of now, YJ really needs some volume for it to really curl above that descending wedge that it formed right there, for it to be so much interesting and schmexy to meow. Otherwise, not interesting. You know what I mean? There we go. There we go. There we go. All right. All right, all right, all right. All right, let's see here. So, that's YJ. Let's see if it has any other news. It's to report its first half of the 2026 financial results on the 20th. We know that already. Other than that, there's no real news here. Other than just that, they're going to be basically talking about earnings. So that's pretty much the only reason why it ran, is earnings news. So other than that, not really many catalysts. So we'll see what happens with the stock. We shall see what happens with it. Let's take a look at another stock over here. Let's take a look at MRNX. MRNX, which is very expensive stock. It was called, ladies and gentlemen, it was called prior to its run up 195%, or excuse me, 198%. And normally we don't actually look into those stocks because they're very expensive, but the stock was moving enough to basically garner our attention. So we did mention it to the Discord. We brought it up to the Discord. So yeah, as of now, had a bit of a pennant right over here. Boom. Curled off this pennant right over here. And then formed another pennant right over here. Alright. So it formed another pennant right over here. Alright, let's get some support and resistance lines for it. Support and resistance. Boom. There we go. So as of now, this stock is extremely expensive. MRNX. Expensive stock. This one is expensive, which is why I don't normally mess with it. And R-Star says, yeah, I cannot see the strong news on YJ yet, just results tomorrow. Yep, we'll see what happens with it. We shall see what happens with it. Alright, expensive stock. We called this stock on our private Discord at 6:53 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Prior to its run up 198%. 198% needs to break the pennant and the high day at 101.29. Again, we don't normally look at stocks that are this expensive, but this was one of those few stocks where it did garner our attention, so we did want to mention it at least. So, yeah, it did catch our attention, so we did want to at least say, oh, hey, by the way, this stock is moving up 198% right there. All right, so there we go. There we go. All right, all right. So that is MRNX. MRNX. All right, let's take a look at another stock over here. Let's take a look at another stock. All right, let's take a look at MRNY. MRNY. This one's a little bit pricey too. Not crazy. Not as crazy as, say, MRNX, but it is a little bit pricey. It is $28.35. A little bit pricey in terms of a stock, but we'll see what goes on over here. Has a bit of a pennant going on right over here, curling its way on up right now off the pennant right there, and looks to be moving its way on up. MRNY. MRNY. Let's take a look over here at that stock right there. There we go. All right, MRNY. MRNY curling upwards. All right, needs volume to break the pennant. Not the pennant. Break the high a day at $29.09 right there. All right, MRNY. MRNY actually was called earlier in the morning as well. We called that one early in the morning at 6:57, and prior to that run up 82%. So we'll see what goes on with it. Needs to break the high a day at 29.09. A little bit expensive, a little bit pricey. Expensive stock, but we'll see what happens there. Curled off the pennant and broke multiple resistance lines. Alright, so we'll see what goes on with it, ladies and gentlemen. We shall see what goes on with it. It is a bit overbought in the RSI right over here, so that's another thing to note right here. Take a look, a little bit overbought over here and over here, so it's a little bit overbought in the RSI, so we're going to keep an eye on it. It has to break above 29.09, which is the high day, for it to be somewhat schmexy to, yeah, otherwise, we'll see what happens, ladies and gentlemen. We shall see what happens. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, let's get a share party going. Let's get a share party going. Yes, sir. Let's get a share party going. Let's get to 200. Let's get to 200, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's get to 200. All right, all right, all right. All right, there we go. All right. Hold on one second. Hold on. There we are. All right. Just want to make sure everything is all copacetic. Let's get a share party going. Let's get to 200. And it looks like MRNY is trying to break that high a day. It looks like it's poking its head above the high a day just a little bit. All right. Looks like it's poking its head above that high a day just a little bit right there. All right. Now it needs to break above $29.23. Needs to break above that little area right there for it to be somewhat schmexy to yeah. Needs to break 29.23. All right. So MRNY needs volume to break the high day at 29.23. Testing the high day up 85% as of now. We'll see what goes on there, ladies and gentlemen. We shall see what goes on there. In the meantime, while that's going on, let's take a look back at YJ. See how YJ is looking. YJ. All right. YJ, as of now, still needs to really break that little bit of consolidation along the support line at $5.29. Needs to break that area for it to be somewhat schmexy to meow. We'll see what happens there, ladies and gentlemen. We shall see what happens. YJ, let's take a look. YJ still needs to break the consolidation along the support line at $5.29. Needs to break the descending wedge and the VWAP, and not the VWAP, excuse me, the high day at $6.39 for it to be somewhat schmexy to meow. There we go. There we go. All right. Needs to break that right there. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. Let's take a look at MRNX. MRNX. Again, extremely heavy stock. Not something I'm interested in entirely. But it did have a nice movement going on there. It looks like it's trying to test the pennant and break it through the pennant. We'll see what happens. MRNY trying to break through the pennant. We'll see what goes on. MRNY testing the pennant. Still needs to break the high day at 101.29 for it to be somewhat interesting to me, and even then it's not really going to be interesting because it's very expensive. So not entirely schmexy. RDAC, how's RDAC holding up? RDAC looks like it's trying to curl above this little pennant right over here. All right, but needs to break that VWAP at $16.14 right there. RDAC trying to curl off the pennant. Needs to break the VWAP at $16.14 for it to be somewhat interesting to me. Otherwise, not really too schmexy to me. All right, let's get a share party going on. Let's get a share party going on. Let's get to 200. Actually, excuse me. Let's get to 300. Let's get to 300. 300. Let's get it. All right. Let's see what else we got going on here, ladies and gentlemen. What else we got? MRNY. All right, MRNY still trying to test that high day at 29.23. Still trying to test that high day, so we'll see what happens. MRNY still trying to test the high day at $29.23 for it to be somewhat schmexy to me. Alright. We shall see what goes on there. RDAC, what's it doing? Let's take a look. Curling slightly. Slight curl off the pennant. We'll see what goes on there. We shall see what goes on. Slight curl off the pennant right there. Up 138%. We'll see what goes on. RDAC. Slight curl off the pennant. Needs to break the VWAP at 16.14 for it to be somewhat interesting to meow. All right, let's take a look at the requests here. Let's take a look at what requests we got here. One second. We're going to actually take a look at EHGO and BIVI before we do that. Give me one sec. EHGO, EHGO. All right. Let's take a look over here. Needs to break $2.87. $2.87. All right. As of now, EHGO. There's a China stock up 50%. EHGO needs volume to break, and EHGO, by the way, is a 2 million float, 30 million volume right there. Needs volume to break the pennant and resistance line at $2.87. 287 for it to be somewhat schmexy to yeah. Where is it? Hey. Oh, it's all the way over there. Alright, whatever. It is what it is. It'll stop in like a few oh, there it is. Yeah, take that. Yeah. Sorry about that. That was my watch. RDAC. RDAC. Looks like it's trying to curl its way on upwards still. At 142. Pulled up to 142. Pulled back a little bit. Needs to remain friends with the trend. Needs to remain friends with the trend. RDAC. RDAC needs to remain friends. Not freeds. Friends with the little uptrend. Alright, that's RDAC. Let's take a look over here. How's TNON looking? TNON formed a bit of a pennant and is working just below the VWAP right now. So not particularly schmexy. Needs to break this pennant. Needs to break above the VWAP as well at 1109. All right, TNON needs to break the pennant and the VWAP at 1109 for it to be somewhat schmexy to mya. There we go. That is TNON. Alright. Let's see what else we got here. Alright, let's get a share party going. Let's get to 400. 400. Hold on 1 second. 1 second. There we are. Alright. Alright. Let's take a look at some of the other stocks we got going on here. Let's take a look at the other stocks right here. Someone requested EHGO. EHGO, again, it has to break that pennant, but also has to break above the $2.87 line right over there. It's currently pulling away from it, so it has to break that little resistance line at 287, has to hold above 265, and needs to break the pennant for it to really be schmexy to me. Otherwise, EHGO needs to break the pennant and the resistance line at 287. Needs more volume right there. Now, this stock I know had some news. Oh, R-Star says EHGO news of expansion into North America. That's good. That is good. It does have news of expansion into North America. Alright. Yep, they did lock up an exclusive North America rights for Chinese printing supply maker. So yes, they do have something going on. And EHGO subsidiary, or Ashalgo subsidiary EHGO California, entered into an exclusive strategic cooperation agreement with Zhongshan Senway, expanding their international business development efforts. And of course, they entered into an exclusive partnership with Zhongshan Senway to support North American expansion. So yes, they do have some they have some expansion news going on there. They are going to be expanding. That is pretty good news. So we'll see what happens with the stock, However, it needs to break that $2.87 mark right there for it to be interesting to me. Otherwise, we'll see what happens, ladies and gentlemen. We shall see what happens. All right, now EHGO. Yeah, we'll see what goes on with it. We shall see. We shall see. Hold on 1 second. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it was called at 6:49 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on our end at just 33%. It's now up 57%, so we'll see what goes on there, ladies and gentlemen. We shall see what goes on. All right. Now, let's take a look. EHGO did just break above $2.87. Still needs to break the pennant and still needs to break the high of day at 323. But it has to hold above that $2.87 mark first. All right. EHGO peaking above resistance at $2.87. Has to hold above it. Needs to hold above it and break the pennant and high a day at $3.23 for it to be somewhat interesting to me. Alright. Alright. Yes. Alright, let's take a look at YJ. Someone requested YJ. YJ, there we go. Alright, YJ as of now still needs to break above that descending wedge, still needs to break above $5.29 for it to be somewhat interesting to me. YJ needs volume to curl off the descending wedge, and the resistance line needs to be alright, and to break the resistance line, and to break the resistance line at $5.29. That is the first thing it needs to do right there for it to be somewhat interesting to me. There we go. There we go. Alright. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we got going on right there. That is what we got going on. Alright. Alright. Let's see here. Hold on 1 second. 1 second. Let me just fix this over here. Alright. Alright. Hold on 1 sec. 1 sec. 1 sec. 1 sec. Hold on. Let me just make sure we're all copacetic on the UB2s. I think we are. I'm pretty sure we are, but just be sure. Alright. Hold on 1 second. Yep, what's up?
I have a live video, a live stream for at 120
Ooh.
private Discord for the
120,
Discord.
120 or 220?
220 Eastern Standard.
220. Okay, yes. Oh, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we will be having a live stream at 220 for the private Discord. All right, for the free rolls. So be sure to get your free roll, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to get your free roll. Hold on, just 1 second. Just 1 second. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, sorry about that. Just had to make sure that YouTube was working. It is working. Thank you. Thank you. All right. All right. Yeesh. All right. There we are. All right. There we go. There we go. All right. So, as of now, let's take a look at TNON. TNON, right there. All right. TNON looks like it's trying to test the VWAP right now at 1108, ladies and gentlemen. TNON needs to break that VWAP at 1108. Trying to test it right now. TNON testing the VWAP at 1108. Needs to break the VWAP and the pennant for it to be somewhat interesting to me. Needs to break that right there. Needs to break it. MRNY. MRNY. All right. Yield max MRNY, mRNA option income strategy ETF basically is up 76% right now. 76%. Looks like it's pulling back a little bit off the little high a day that's got going on right there. Looks like it's pulling back off that high a day. Needs to curl its way on up right there. Needs to curl. All right. For it to be somewhat schmexy to me. Faisal says hi. Hi Faisal. Hope you're doing well, brother man. Hope you're making lots of money. How you doing? How are you? All right. And he says TGL. Sure. We'll take a look at it. Give me just a second. Let me finish MRNY, and we will take a look. All right. Let's take a look over here. MRNY needs to break the descending wedge right over here and needs to break that high a day at 29.23. That's really what has to go on over here. MRNY needs volume to break the descending wedge bull pattern and needs to break the high a day at 29.23 for it to be somewhat interesting to me. Let's take a look at TGL. TGL for our friend Faisal. All right, Faisal, as of now, with the stock right here, it looks like it is pulling its way on down. It had a price spike upward, pulled its way on down over here. Looks like it's trying to curl off the downtrend just a little bit, but is currently forming a bit of a pennant right here. Needs to break this pennant, needs to break above the $3.21 mark for it to be somewhat interesting to me. That's what it needs to do right there for it to be so much mixy to me. So as of now, TGL curled off the downtrend and formed a pennant. Needs to break the pennant and the VWAP at $3.21 for it to be somewhat interesting to me. That is the first thing that needs to happen right there. For it to be so much maxy to me, it is currently up 4% right now. TGL also pretty sure it has a pretty actually, I stand corrected. It actually has a relatively decent float at approximately 2 million. Volume is 4 million, so it's got that going on. Needs more volume, but other than that, it looks like it is going to potentially, maybe, possibly, could potentially break that pennant. We'll see what happens. We will see what happens. Needs to break that pennant and needs to break that VWAP at $3.21. Faisal says, I'm good. Thanks. Of course, brother. All right. Hey, as long as you're doing good, brother, man. As long as you're doing good. He says, thanks, of course. Our pleasure, man. Our pleasure. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have any stocks you want us to take a look at, put it in the chat. Put it in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Put it in the chat. All right. We'll take a look at it. Yes, sir. All right. Hold on. All right. All right. Let me get this Share party going on. Let's get the share party going on over here. Let's get to 700. 700, 700, 700. Let's get it. Let's get it, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get it. Yes, sir. All right. All right, all right, all right. All right. Okay. Alrighty, alrighty, alrighty. Okay. Let's take a look at TNON. TNON now up 118%. Oh my, curling its way on up off the pennant right now. TNON curling up off the pennant right there. All right. Now this stock was actually called yesterday and today. So we actually called the stock yesterday at 4:02 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but we also called it this morning at 4:03 a.m. Eastern Standard Time prior to its run up 129%. So TNON, we called this stock on our private Discord yesterday and this morning at, hold on, 4:03 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Needs volume, right? Actually, prior to its run up 129%. Needs volume, but is curling off the pennant and broke the VWAPA. Needs volume to break. Hold on, let me get the support and resistance lines over here. Boom and boom. Needs volume to break that $11.91 mark. Needs volume to break the $11.91 resistance line for it to be somewhat schmexy to meow. So it has to do that right there. That is what it has to do for it to be somewhat interesting to meow. All right, let me just put this over here. Boom. All right. There we are. All right. So let's see what else we got. What else we got? MRNX. MRNX. All right. MRNX currently up 182%. Still needs to break that pennant. And definitely needs to break that high a day at $101.29, which again, it's still expensive. Not a big fan of this stock, but I will give it credit where credit's due. It did have a nice run. So we'll take a look. MRNX still needs to break the pennant and the VWAPA at, or excuse me, the high a day at 101.29 for it to be somewhat schmexy to meow. That's MRNX. MRNX, how's YJ holding up? YJ. Alright, YJ looks like it's trying to curl off the pennant just a little bit off the descending wedge. Tiny curl off the descending wedge potentially. We'll see what happens. Alright, YJ needs to curl off the descending wedge and the resistance line at $5.29. That is YJ right there. We'll see what happens. RDAC, RDAC. Let's see what's going on with it. RDAC now up 142%. Pulled back a little bit. Now trying to curl once again. Needs to still break that $16.06 mark right there. RDAC. once again trying to curl, needs volume to break the VWAP at $16.06. So we'll see what happens with it. All right. Let's get a share party going, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get a share party going. Let's get to 800. 800, 800, 800. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Yes, sir. All right. All right. Someone requested YJ once again. Let's take a look at YJ. Ooh. Looks like it's curling off that descending wedge. It broke the resistance right there. Broke that resistance. Oh my. YJ curling off the descending wedge. Broke the resistance. Curling off the descending wedge and broke the resistance. Line needs to now break the high of day at, hold on, $6.39. That is the next target right there. That is the next, wow, that is the next instance that it has to break above for me. Not a target. You know what I mean? Nothing like that. To me, it's basically like needs to break above the high a day. That's what it has to do for it to be somewhat interesting to me. Alright. Needs to break that high a day at $6.39 for it to be somewhat schmexy to me. Alright. There we are. There we are. Someone requested TNON. Alright. Now, 10 medical shares are trading higher after the company received a notice of allowance for U.S. patent titled Systems, Apparatus, and Methods for Stabilizing Sacroiliac Joints. So it's got that going on right there. It is currently on a bit of an uptrend. Needs to remain friends with the trend and needs to break above the resistance line at 1191 for it to be somewhat schmexy to meow. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. So TNON, TNON needs to remain friends with the trend and break the resistance line at $11.91 for it to be somewhat schmexy to meow. Alright. Let's see what else we got here. Hold on, hold on. Alright. Alright, so let's see about another stock over here. How about EHGO? Has a 2 million float, 37 million volume. Let's take a look at EHGO, see what it's got going on. We'll take a look. Once again, we will take a look at it over here. It did form a bit of a resistance as well. I should probably note this at $3.06. But as of now, needs to break this pennant, needs to break above the resistance at $2.87 for it to be somewhat interesting to me. EHGO. EHGO needs to break the resistance line at $2.87. And the pennant for it to be somewhat interesting to me. Has to break that pennant though. Alright, alright, alright. So, there we are, there we are. Alright. Alright, let's see what we got going on here. Ooh, let's get the stretch. Yeesh. Oof. I needed that. Anyways. Whew. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look, see what we got going on here. Alright. Not going to take a look at GLMD because I already know that's either a reverse split or something just happened to it because it's moving up 853% on 8 million float and like 14,000 volume. Yeah, no, I don't trust that. Alright. YJ, let's take a look at YJ, see how YJ is holding up. YJ is currently curling off the descending wedge and still needs to break that $6.39 high of day. Alright, but YJ is curling its way on upward. Alright. AZ says hi. Hi, AZ. How you doing, man? He asked for WFF. Most definitely. Let me just finish up on YJ, and we will take a look at WFF. Alright, so YJ, as of now, YJ curling up off the descending wedge. And still climbing up to the high of day at $6.39. So we'll see what goes on there. Alright, so let's take a look at WFF. That's the next one that AZ wants us to take a look at. WFF. Alright. And he says, good. I'm glad to hear that you're good, AZ. I'm glad to hear you're good, brother. Alright, so as of now with WFF, it's currently down 5%. As of now, a lot of choppiness and a lot of indecisive wicks at it right now. So it doesn't look like it has much in terms of volume. We'll take a look over here, see what it's got going on. Float is 5.6 million. Volume, however, is 662,000. So it is a very low floated stock right there. WFF. Low float. Excuse me, low volume. Excuse me, low volume. Low volume. Low float and low volume. Needs to break the choppy price action and indecisive wicks, as well as the VWAP at $2.14 for it to be somewhat interesting to me, but it needs a lot of volume. Alright, AZ asks for EHGO as well, so we'll take a look at EHGO for him. Alright, EHGO as of now, hold on, let me actually move this over here. EHGO did have a high a day at $3.30, had a bit of a resistance over here, $3.06, and also needs to break above the resistance line at $2.92, while also holding above both the pennant and the $2.69 support line right there. Right, has to hold above 269, has to break the pennant and $2.92, which is the resistance line, and then $3.30 for it to be somewhat schmexy to meow. So let's take a look over here. Let's take a look over here. All right, EHGO needs volume to break the pennant and the resistance line at $2.92. Needs to hold support at $2.69 for it to be somewhat schmexy to meow. That's EHGO as of now. Needs to break that pennant. Needs to break above 292. That is the first step forward. So we'll take a look at EHGO later. We'll take a look at EHGO in just a bit. Let's get a share party going on, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get to 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get to 1,000. All right, and AZ says, thanks, bro. Of course, man. Our pleasure. Our pleasure, brother, man. Our pleasure. And ladies and gentlemen, if you got any stocks you want us to take a look at, put it in the chat. Put it in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Put it in the chat. If you got any stocks you want us to take a look at. Yes, sir. All right, all right. We're going to take a look at RDAC. 4 million float, 6 million volume. RDAC, how's it holding up? RDAC is forming another tiny little pennant right over here. Again, it's a little tiny one. It's a little tiny one. Alright. So, as of now, RDAC formed another pennant and is consolidating below the VWAPA. Needs to break the pennant and the alright, and the VWAP at $16.04 for it to be somewhat schmexy to me. Hold on. There we are. Ooh. Alright. Alright, ladies and gentlemen. There we are. Let's see what else we got going on. Okay, let's take a look at YJ, see what it's up to. YJ. Alright, curling its way on up right now. There we are. Beautiful. Beautiful. Curling up to test that high a day. YJ. YJ. Curling up to test the high of day at $6.39. Curling up to test that high day at $6.39 right there. Yes. Alright. So, yeah, as of now, it needs to break above that high day at $6.39 for it to be somewhat interesting to me. Alright. Alright. Let's get a share party going. Yes, sir. Alright. Alright. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much it from me. So, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as well as ring that bell icon to stay notified when new videos are uploaded. And remember to share, because sharing is caring, ladies and gentlemen. Sharing is caring. And of course, if you want access to our private Discord, the link to join is in the description down below, as well as the pinned comment section. So be sure to check that out. We pick a lot of baggers a lot of times. We're just made different. And the early bird gets the cash, the moolah, the loots, the cash, the big bucks, I tell you. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, you can find us on our YouTube channel at Coaching Money. At Coaching Money, where we do all sorts of live streaming, stock reviews, and stock analysis. All right, be sure to check us out on our X.com, aka Twitter, at Coaching Money. At Coaching Money. Be sure to check us out on our Twitch, at Coaching Money. At Coaching Money. You can find us on our Facebook, at Coaching Money. At Coaching Money. You can find us on our Instagram and Threads, at Coaching Money. At Coaching Money. You can find us on our TikTok, Tiki Taki, aka the Tac Tac. The Tac Tac. You can find us there at DBL Nicks. At DBL NICKS, and the screen name is Coach Nick Money. Money. Yes. You can find us there, ladies and gentlemen. You can find us there. All right. And, of course, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to stay tuned for 1:30 p.m. for Power Play, hosted by the legend himself, Coach McMoney, as he traverses the stock market prior to the Power Hour. And basically what he likes to do, well, he's sitting there waiting for the stocks to simmer on high heat with a little bit of paprika, a little bit of sazon, a little bit of cumin, a little bit of all that good stuff right there. What he likes to do is he likes to basically just he likes to, just get some dubs for the community of Fortnite, get some dubs for the community. All right? And that's what he likes to do there while he's waiting for the stonks to simmer on high heat there. All right? And of course, be sure to stay tuned for 2:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our exclusive Discord live stream on the free Discord. That's going to be at 2:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so be sure to join the free Discord to see the Discord exclusive live stream here. Get your rolls as soon as you get in there and click that link in the description down below, as well as the pinned comment section. And yeah, be sure to check it out, ladies and gentlemen. All right, and you also get access to a couple of other cool things with the free Discord. You also get access to, for example, the occasional alerts that come up there. You also get access to the occasional reviews that we got going on up there. So be sure to check that out. So you get access to 3 wonderful things: live streams, the occasional picks, and the occasional reviews. That's what you get going on right there. That's just what the free package is. Basically a sample of the premium package. Now, if you want the premium package, be sure to check out our 4-day trial for our real-time alerts and scanners for only $9.99. Link to join us in the description down below, as well as the pinned comment section, so be sure to check it out. And remember to share, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to check that out, ladies and gents. All right, we pick a lot of baggers a lot of times. We're just made different, and the early bird gets the cash. And be sure to check out our merch as well. All right. Now, if you've been watching and you're serious about trading small caps, don't just sit on the outside trying to piece it together, because we got that 4-day full access pass again for $9.99. And it's full access. So you come inside, you get to see how we actually operate live. You get to see how we structure trade ideas, how we think about risk, how we handle momentum, how we map our levels. You get access to the next day early watch list, as well as 24/7 market news flow, which is shown on the right-hand side of the screen right there. You get 24/7 access to all this news right here at the touch of a button with hyperlinks built in. You also get access to our pre-market regular hours and after-hours scanners, consisting of float, volume, catalyst, context built right in, hyperlinks, and all sorts of other amazing things that help people basically learn and do their own due diligence, all of which is at the touch of a button right there. Boom, that's it. And you also get access to our ticker tape, built to catch stocks when they're starting to heat up, but before they go parabolic, because, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't noise, it's structure. And if that's how you want to approach this market, grab the 4-day pass and come see it live, ladies and gentlemen. The link is in the description down below, as well as the pinned comment section. When you come in, let us know you saw us on the stream. We'd love to hear from you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much it from me. Stay tuned for 1:30 p.m. Power Play, and then after that, get the free roll on the Discord, and yeah, be sure to get that free roll so you can get access to the exclusive live stream that's going to be coming at you at 2:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right there. So that's what you got going on right there, ladies and gentlemen. That is what we got going on. All right. Much love, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you guys soon. And yeah, that's it. Much love. Peace out. Take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful day. And I'll see you at 1:30.